Hi, Pradeep.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Who else I should? Mukesh, Kumar, Pragya. Roj should be able to join. Aditya and Pragya. Roj is the
Sure.
technical person, but her computer is slow. She is sitting in Germany. So I had to start it. I cannot know who to enter and who. Aditi, you have right.
Pradeep,
Yeah.
your voice is not clear. Can you say that again?
No, wait. Let me use this.
Pradeep, our speakers are they in the waiting room?
Okay, who I should? All of them. Syed Khai is who? Which is
Pratima, Kanlaya.
Okay, I'll allow her now. Yes.
Yeah.
Martin is who? Martin M is Martin M is who? Okay, let me allow because who I'll allow, Pragya?
Kanlaya and Pratima.
Are they in the waiting room? Let me see.
I'm not sure.
No, not yet, not yet.
Not yet? Okay. I'll remind them.
Sure. Shayad Khais is who? Martin Mukesh Kumar, because okay, I can let me add. So I do not know how to hi friends, we are just setting up the technical things. Please wait. I do not know. The only thing I'll face trouble till Roj is joining Aditi is to assign you the role of interpretation. Pragya, if Rose fails to join, then we'll have to do a kind of simultaneous interpretation. After after the lady speaks, maybe Aditi can sum it up in 2 minutes.
Okay, then that means the speaker
Have
will
to
have
adjust
most
it.
probably 3 minutes and 2 minutes for the summary.
Yeah, that
okay.
that should do.
Yeah.
We'll try to kind of sharp start at 11:30. I'm expecting Arjun to join. He'll do the intro and context, and then we'll end at 1. I mean, just in 2 hours, because after that we'll have the ADA session, not in this Zoom platform, but that's also part of the Global People's Assemblies. We'll try to stick to the time. Let's see. Okay, so I think Roj is in. Roj, I'll make you a host, right? Hi. Roj is writing something. Let me see. Yeah.
Hi, Pradeep. This is Bal.
Hi, Bal. How are you?
Good. Fine.
I can see colleagues.
Hi. Hey, everyone.
Hi. Arjun Bhai, have you joined? Yeah, hi. So Arjun Bhai, maybe
Yeah,
2-3 minutes, then we
I am here.
start. We have now colleagues joining.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Pradeep, I'm using data because my Wi-Fi is disrupted from yesterday. So there may be weak connection from my side, but I may be.
You can switch up your video there.
Yeah. In that case, I'll be in switch off mode of the
that's
video.
okay. Hi, Daya.
Hi, Pradeep ji.
How are you?
Fine. And you?
All well, all well. Hi,
Pradeep,
Jal.
just give me signal and I'll start, okay?
Yeah.
Pradeep,
Yeah.
Pradeep, we don't have Latsat here.
She should join. If not, then Jamila, probably she'll join. Jamila.
Jamila is here.
Yeah, but Lijat.
Hello. Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Our time. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
So
looking
she-
for the speaker from Kazakhstan, from Central Asia, Lazat, and trying to
Lajat.
catch her. Okay.
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 So no problem. I think Armina, your video is upside down. You are trying to fix that? Okay. We can see you actually upside down. Right.
Do we have Rohini?
Aditi should be able to tell me. But we can start, Pragya. Arjun bhai, you can. Hi, colleagues.
Okay.
I invite Arjun Bhattarai, the Global Council member of GCAP and Deputy Secretary General of NGO Federation of Nepal, GCAP Nepal, to do the intro and context setting. Then we'll take it forward. Thank you for joining. Arjun bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep.
When colleagues are not speaking, you can mute yourself. We have kept it open, but before the video is on, we want to see each other.
Okay. Thank you, Pradeep bhai. Dear friends, CSO leaders, major groups and stakeholders. As Pradeep said, I am Arjun Bhattarai. I am GCAP Global Council member. And it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you on this important gathering of Asia People's Assembly today. The global call to action against poverty, together with wider civil society, is organizing Global People's Assembly from 21st to 23rd September 2021 as a part of Global Goals Week or SDG Action Week, started from 17th September, which is going to be concluded on 28th September this month, focusing on a turning point to recover better for peoples and planet. It is designed to bring together peoples from leaders to citizens to accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals (SDG). People all over the world and our regions in every country every day suffer from the overlapping impact of the COVID-19, inequality, poverty, violence, discrimination, militarization, injustice, environment degradations, and a sinking of their rights. In this context, we are organizing this regional people assembly with the objectives to bring together community and the first century representatives from across the regions together in a broad dialogue to discuss the COVID-19 situation relating to loss of lives, vaccination for all, social protection and livelihood, climate justice, and link to the SDGs, to invite the legislature face-to-face with the peoples to hear and respond to their demands, to prepare a regional demand charter to be shared in the Global Assembly and other fora. This assembly, observing as an opportunity to citizens, civil society, major groups, and stakeholders to discuss progress so far and provide perspective on the policy and action that can accelerate recover from the pandemic and set Asia on the path to achieving the 2030 agenda and SDG. All governments and stakeholders are not optimistic and applying action in real ground to deliver on global commitments made in 2015 in relation to the Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework of Disaster Risk Reduction, Women, Peace and Security 1325, and deliver on the 2030 agenda. Therefore, with the people's movements, community, and civil society are standing again across the Asia and raising voice to recall government and stakeholders to fulfill their commitment with urgency and the political determination. In this regard, the global call to action against poverty, Asia, together with the Asia Dalit Forums, Asia Civil Society Partnership for Sustainable Development, Asia Democracy Network, Asia Development Alliance, Action Aid India, Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, People's Vaccine Alliance, Asia Chapter, Oxfam Asia, Network of Indigenous Women in Asia, Forum Asia, South Asia Alliance for Poverty Eradication, SAPE, Fight Inequality Alliance, Asia, ARGO, Central Asia Disability Forum, Central Asia Expert Network of Women with Disability, Wadana Todo Abhiyan, NGO Federation Nepal, Philippines Rural Reconstruction Movements, GCAP Bangladesh, Pakistan Development Alliance, and People's Movement of Asia are going to organize this Asia Regional People Assembly. Therefore, I'd like to welcome and thank you again on behalf of GCAP and all organizations for your time and commitment. With this, without delay, now I would like to invite Pradeep Baishak, Asia Coordinator of GCAP, for the overall moderation for this important event. Thank you very much, fans. So, floor to Pradeep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arjun Bhai. Now I will now invite Pragya Rai of AIPP, Asia Indigenous Peoples Forum, People's Pact, and NIWA, Network of Indigenous Women in Asia, to moderate the first session, where we'll have voices from different communities across the region. Pragya, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good morning, good afternoon to all. Welcome to the first session of Asia Regional People's Assembly. As Pradeep said, I'm Pragya Rai from Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact and also representing Network of Indigenous Women in Asia, NIWA. AIPP is a regional organization working for the promotion and advancement of Indigenous peoples movement since 1992. COVID has brought in tremendous challenges to all, particularly to those who were left behind. AIPP and GCAP Global has recently published a global report on Leave No Women Behind, where evidences of increased land grabbing, increased gender-based violence against Indigenous women and girls were reported. It is commendable that GCAP continues its effort to raise and amplify voices of the ones left behind. Today, I'm honored to be moderating this session with remarkable speakers from the Asia region. Being a woman from Indigenous community myself, I am especially excited to see all-female panel from different intersections of life. Today, we have 5 speakers from Asia region who will be sharing their insights and experiences. Each speaker will be presenting for 4 minutes. Now, without any further delay, let me welcome Ms. Kanlaya Chularattakorn, representing Indigenous Women Network of Thailand, who belongs to Hmong community herself. She has been contributing to empowerment of Indigenous women of Thailand for last 25 years. Kanlaya, please share what are the issues and challenges faced by the Indigenous communities, especially Indigenous women in Thailand, during COVID-19, and if you could also share 2 main demands from your side. Kanlaya, you have 4 minutes, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pragya. Firstly, thank you, Pragya, and also good morning to everyone. Because of the short time, I will be very brief now on the issues that are faced by the Indigenous women and Indigenous communities here in Thailand, especially during the COVID-19. The biggest problem for us here now, the Indigenous communities here, is that we have lack of access to information on the COVID-19, the symptoms, and also how to prevent it, especially the women and also the elder peoples, because women and elders are the ones who are left at the village, with the young one going to the cities, working and studies. So these are the among the most marginalized members in our communities and also in the societies now. because of the lack of information in indigenous languages. Now, these women have had very challenged now in understanding the COVID. Now, what is really COVID and the symptom? Now, what are the symptoms and how to prevent themselves from the COVID-19? And also because of this situation now, there are lots of fake news now, fake information on COVID-19 now going around in indigenous communities. One even spreading now the news that chicken manure now can kill the COVID-19, and this has been how to say, believed now by many indigenous communities, and many women and especially elders now have taken this chicken manure now in order to prevent themselves from this being infected now by the COVID-19. And also during the lockdown of the COVID now, we have had a very big challenge because there are authorities coming up to our village and locking the communities now, and they don't allow people to go out, and also they don't allow outsider people to come in. But they didn't provide any basic needs now, like food or medical equipments like masks or sanitation gels to the people. So indigenous women as mother now have been struggling a lot on this now, asking from help now from different source of organization that who could provide this help for the communities. And also one very important thing is about the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccination. There's no enough information on the choices of COVID-19 vaccination, and also the side effects of each vaccine provided to indigenous communities now in their languages. So what had happened is that most indigenous people now, they are being injected now with the vaccine that is not chosen or selected by themselves now. And when they are asking for information from the nurses, from the health officers now on the vaccines now, they are asked not to say anything, not to ask for anything, because they are not doctor, no? So this has been very difficult for indigenous people in Thailand, especially women and the elders. So yeah, so what we want to demand, for our peoples here is that we have the rights to information. We want all information on COVID-19 and also choices of vaccination being given in our languages, so that we can have all the information needed and then can make decision by ourselves, for ourselves now. And another demand that I want to say here is that we want the government, or especially the local authorities, to provide basic needs now to the communities, especially the communities who are under the lockdown. In many indigenous communities now, at least 30 indigenous communities, they are being locked down now, but there's very little basic needs are provided now to the community members. So this is my demand to the government, Thai governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanlaya. It was quite a valuable sharing. Like how you said of the COVID-19 responses, not taking into account the inclusion of marginalized groups. A basic thing as inclusion of indigenous languages is something that proves that even the responses are not also proportionate. Thank you, Kanlaya. Now we have a remarkable youth leader from South Asia. She is Ms. Tamanna Barait from Dalit, Asia Dalit Rights Forum, Bangladesh. Tamanna, now you have 4 minutes to share how the COVID-19 has affected the communities you're working with.
Thank you so much, distinguished panelists, moderator, organizers, and participants. Greetings from Bangladesh. I'm Tamana Singh Baraik. I represent the Dalit community in Bangladesh. First, I like to express my gratitude and thanks for letting me to speak about the Dalit community and Dalit women in Bangladesh. The first confirmed case of COVID-19 was identified in Bangladesh on 8 March 2020, despite more than 2 months of shutting down and general holidays declared by the government starting from 25th March 2020. It proves to be challenging to reduce the number of infections, instead increasing day by day after relaxing the shutdown and reopening the activities. In Bangladesh, 6.5 million Dalit lives here. Dalit girls are becoming victims of child marriage and physical and mental health and violence. Caste hierarchy and practical structures put Dalit women as the most deprived, who are triply aligned on the basics of class, caste, and gender. Dalit women face high degree of violence and oppressions. Dalit women experience gender disparities within their household and community, with practical values and practice being pervasive and persistent among Dalit communities. Dalit women largely depend on the income of the male members of the family. Moreover, they are not permitted to do other jobs by the male members of the family. According to Dalit males, girls, children should be put under strict control to keep the purity and honor of the community. Education for women is largely denied in Dalit community. A study has shown that Dalit community faces deprivation and inequality in education institutions. Elders are in opinion that women's education is unless and they better learn household jobs. Most of the Dalit girls are dropped before completing primary level. Guardians are reluctant to send girls to school because of frequent incidents of sexual harassment in the way to school. They have to follow the decision of their male counterpart or father on marriage, bearing child, of even going anywhere out of home. As there is one option of divorce, many women have to suffer and remain with their tormenting husband. Girls are accused even if they are tortured by their husband. Community used to force women to leave husband if they marry a non-Dalit man, and once separated, will be treated with humiliations. Awareness level of the Dalit community on mental and neonatal health is extremely low. Mother and newborn often face fetal, and due to malnutrition of the mother in pregnancy, they often face reluctance and less attention in the public health center as they belong to low birth. I just include our T communities peoples now just getting salary $1.42 every day. So lack of wages in our T community, and in Bangladesh during this corona period, our Dalit women are more facing challenges, and they are more victimized in this corona period. So our recommendation, providing small funds for Dalit colonies for business, or Dalit women's. Planning and budgeting from a gender lens must necessarily include the intersectionality framework, whereby the perspective, interests, and needs of women from the most disadvantaged group like Dalit women are brought to the fore. The government should integrate gender and caste awareness training for all government officials and police at the national, district, and local government institutional levels. Training programs by the government, National Human Rights Commission, and NGOs should empower Dalits and Dalit women in particular to secure the protection and promotion of their human rights. Special schemes should be created to ensure income generation schemes, skill trainings, vocational education, and related initiatives for Dalit women across the country. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you. Those were very strong recommendations, and you have shedded light on how COVID-19 has increased this multiple discrimination on women from all intersections. Thank you. Now, let me welcome our next speaker. She's Liazat Kalteva. She's the chairperson of Central Asian Disability Forum and chairperson Association of Women with Disabilities, Kazakhstan. She has been instrumental in establishing, managing, and developing the movement of women with disabilities in Kazakhstan and other Central Asian countries. Liazat, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you so much, distinguished participants of this event. It is my honor to speak on behalf of the Central Asian Disability Forum, CADF, which was established in 2012 by 22 organizations promoting right-based approach to the issues of women and men with disabilities living in 5 Central Asian countries. I also represent here the Central Asian Expert Network of Women with Disabilities, which since 2005 promotes the rights of women with disabilities and advances a gender approach to state disability policies. Both our networks serve as an example of sustainable regional partnership and cooperation. The range of their activities were carried out aimed at creative, effective, accountable, and participatory institutions at all levels within the framework of more than 30 projects. Basically, the initiatives are related to the accession and implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in our countries. Each of the countries is at its own stage of progress. However, the issue of creating an independent monitoring mechanism for the implementation of the convention is highly important for every one of us. In the context of the COVID situation with COVID-19, I would like to highlight our activities to access to information for persons with disabilities, especially for persons with intellectual disabilities. The information about the COVID-19 was provided in our countries without any access for persons with different types of disabilities. For example, for those who have hearing and visual impairments. That's why we, in our organization, we developed video materials with sign language, audio, text, and other types of accessible formats, because we could saw that people with disabilities were not able to recognize the information which lead to the bad health condition related to the COVID-19 in very high range. We conducted training courses to prepare specialists in Central Asia who are able to convert information into the easy to read format for persons with intellectual disabilities. And all these materials were converted to this format. It is fundamentally important for us to adapt, first of all, information about human rights. And we, in the near future, we will present our first translation, the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in easy to read format, the information about the COVID-19 in easy to read format. Speaking about the COVID-19 pandemic, I would like to stress that the issues of promoting the construction of the open society as well as global partnership for sustainable development must be considered through the prism of gender equality and the civil society in the Central Asia region has its own history and extensive experience in this field. However, the influence of the patriarchal base and traditional approach to the role of the women in the family and society, the strengthening of fundamental Islam, sexless approach to disability lead to the fact that women and girls with disabilities continue to experience a serious burden of double discrimination as a woman and as a person with disabilities. Now, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, these phenomena are particularly revealed and require serious intervention and global support. The recent studies, including rapid assessment conducted in our countries, show a sharp increase in gender-based violence related to the quarantine measures of our government, to the situation with pandemic of COVID-19, which is often latent in nature due to the isolation in which women, men, and children with disabilities often find themselves. Programs.
Sorry, Liazat, I would ask you to wrap it up.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you so much, and I'm finishing. This violence is often latent, and we have to collaborate and to share all measures in the context of COVID-19 pandemic in strong global partnership and cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liazat. Sorry for cutting you off. I think you're sharing about especially addressing the needs of persons with intellectual disability. I think that is very, very significant, and also the monitoring of international conventions on disability. Thank you for your valuable sharing. Our next speaker is Pratima Guru. She is an academic activist involved in research and advocacy, and she has been working on gender, disability, indigenous, and marginalized group issues. She's a very strong and prominent voice in Nepal and in Asia on the rights of indigenous women and disability. Pratima ji, the floor is yours. Sorry, but you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Pragyaji, and thank you to the Asia Regional People's Assembly Forum for providing me this opportunity. I am Pratima Gurung and representing indigenous people with disabilities from Nepal and across Asia. So regarding the COVID context related with multiple identities group, we all know the COVID-19 pandemic crisis is an unfolding against the backdrop of the several important milestones for equality and human rights of various marginalized groups, including women and girls, indigenous people, and persons with disabilities. If you look at the multiple and intersecting identities of the COVID-19 also have further exacerbated underlying structural inequalities and historical and pervasive discriminations, which are more visible in inadequate healthcare, education, access to information, employment, and livelihood. So there are several challenges that has been faced by groups with multiple and intersecting identities, and these identities have really further compounded many forms of systematic, structural discriminations, oppressions, and exclusion due to the several barriers in the society. And as a indigenous people or women with disabilities, I realize and we say that we fall in the lowest hierarchy on the social spectrum. If you look at the global data, 54 million indigenous people with disabilities and 28 million women with disabilities from Asia represent. And among the 54 million indigenous people and 28 million indigenous people and women from all around the globe, we could see that 80% of them belong from Asia. And Nepal is also part of those 80% who belong from Asia. And if you look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the study and the research that has been conducted at Nepal shows clearly, it clearly outlines that 91.31% experience social and economic impact during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at the other data, it clearly outlines that 60.74% Indigenous people with disabilities and 72.8% their family members have lost their livelihoods. We see the mental health problem is one of the prominent issues that is been very much impacted during the COVID pandemic. And we see that 19.49% Indigenous people with disabilities only have received psychosocial counseling during this COVID pandemic. And if you look at the entire process of girls and women with disabilities from Indigenous communities, near about 91.2% have clearly outlined that they have faced serious impact, violence, abuse, and attempt to rape during this COVID pandemic. So by saying all these data, we see that there is a still huge gap among the CSOs, among the government to intervene and to reach to the most marginalized groups. When it comes to groups with multiple and intersecting identities, during the COVID pandemic period, we realized that access to information was one of the very crucial point. Apart from that, we also realized that disability inclusion, including the accessibility needs that are required for women and girls with disabilities and also Indigenous women were very much crucial. By highlighting all these situation and the challenges during COVID, I would like to suggest concrete recommendations that intersectional lens is one of the very important approach to reach the most marginalized group. Disability, culture, and gender lens are crucial, and it must be integrated in all the aspects. Intersectorial coordination, communication, and consultations by ensuring the meaningful participation of the most marginalized groups is very much crucial. Collective and individual rights, including the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous people, are very much crucial at the time of pandemic and also in the normal situation. One of the issues that I wanted to highlight is about the disaggregated data based on caste, ethnicity, sex, gender, and other identities for generating evidences from the ground and also to conduct research is very much crucial. And finally, I would like to say that all the CSOs, including the government and the development partners, have to introduce specific targeted intervention with long and short-term intervention for the most marginalized groups, including Indigenous people and women with disabilities, so that no one will be left behind and everyone will be integrated in the whole entire discussion. So the meaningful, effective participation of all marginalized groups, including Indigenous people with disabilities, must be at the center. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratima ji. I think you have summed it very well. The most important points of intersectional lens, intersectorial interventions, disaggregated data, and meaningful participation and representation. Thank you, Pratima ji. Now, I'd like to call upon our last speaker. She is Rohini Chari. She belongs to Bedia community of Central India. The community is one of the most marginalized communities in India, and its women have been practicing sex work for generations now. She will talk about how the already vulnerable communities, especially women and children, have been impacted by the pandemic. For your information, she will be presenting in Hindi. So please switch to the English interpretation channel if we require interpretation. Please click the globe icon on the bottom bar of your screen and select English.
Hello.
Rohini, yes, you can start.
हाँ, सभी को नमस्ते. थैंक यू प्रज्ञा ये बताने के लिए कि मेरी इंग्लिश अच्छी नहीं है. सो थैंक यू. मैं अपना परिचय दे देती हूँ. मेरा नाम रोहिणी छारी है और मैं इंडिया में मध्य प्रदेश के जिला मुरैना में रहती हूँ. और जिस कम्युनिटी से मैं आती हूँ थोड़ा सा उसके बारे में मैं बता दूं. मैं डीएनटी समुदाय में जो घुमंतु समाज और या क्रिमिनल एक्ट से जो प्रभावित कम्युनिटी है, भेड़िया कम्युनिटी, और उसकी एक पहचान है कि वो उनकी लड़कियां सेक्स वर्कर का काम करती हैं और मैं उस कम्युनिटी से बिलोंग करती हूं और उन्हीं के साथ मेरा काम अभी 15 साल से कंटिन्यू है. अगर मैं कम्युनिटी की बात करूं तो कम्युनिटी को कोविड-19 के दौरान सभी लोग इफेक्टिव थे, जितने भी थे काम करने वाले लोग, लेकिन सबसे ज्यादा फर्क पड़ा उन लोगों को जो डेली के मजदूर थे और काम करने वाले लोग थे। तो अगर मैं उनके बारे में अगर मैं बात करूं तो सबसे ज्यादा उनके रोजगार पे असर पड़ा, और वो कोई ऐसा सेलिब्रिटी।
Rohini, 1 minute. Pragya, have we requested the colleagues to join the English interpretation? It's on.
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Please continue. Yeah.
ओके। तो मैं समुदाय के बारे में थोड़ा सा यही बताना चाह रही थी कि क्रिमिनल एक्ट ने तो प्रभावित किया ही है, जो 8071 का एक्ट लगा था उसने क्रिमिनलाइज किया था। तो के असर में कोई काम और रोजगार ऐसा नहीं था कि कम्युनिटी करती। तो सॉरी, मैं वीडियो का कर सकती हूँ, लेकिन शायद सही नहीं आएगा, इस वजह से मैं नहीं ओपन कर पा रही हूँ। सो सॉरी। कम्युनिटी का अगर मैं बात करूं तो कम्युनिटी में जो सेक्स वर्कर थे वो सारा मेट्रो सिटी के अंदर, जैसे दिल्ली है, मुंबई है, नागपुर है, कैलकाटा है, ऐसे रेड लाइट एरियाओं में, और वहां पर डांस बार का जो मुंबई में कल्चर है उसमें वो लोग इन्वॉल्व हैं। तो कोविड-19 जैसे ही आया, लॉकडाउन के बारे में पता चला, तो वो प्रिपेयर नहीं थे लोग कि वो अपने घर को या परिवार को, या उनके पास इतना अर्निंग नहीं है कि वो कुछ समय के लिए वो उसको यूज कर सकते थे, उस पैसे को, या वो यूज कर सकते थे उन संसाधनों को जो उनको जीने की एक व्यवस्था थी, उसमें उसको सपोर्ट कर पाते। तो एकदम से लगा लॉकडाउन, और उसमें भी एकदम सारा जगह कर्फ्यू जैसा था, और उसमें हमने कुछ चीजों को निकाला था कि सबसे ज्यादा दिक्कत है, अगर हम सोशल स्कीम को लेकर गवर्नमेंट का जो रवैया था वो भी बहुत ही अलग तरीके का था। कि अगर हम सूखा राशन की बात करें तो कम्युनिटी के पास उस एक्ट के प्रभाव से, जो क्रिमिनल एक्ट लगा था, उनके पास 90-50 का रिकॉर्ड नहीं है। 90-50 का रिकॉर्ड ना होने के कारण उनके पास जाति प्रमाण पत्र नहीं है, और यहाँ जो राशन कार्ड बनते हैं उनको उसके लिए प्रूफ देना पड़ता है कि वो 90-50 का रिकॉर्ड उनका है या नहीं। तो कई लोगों के पास राशन कार्ड नहीं थे, जो गवर्नमेंट उनको कुछ दे सकती थी तो उसका बेनिफिट उनको मिलता। तो वो बेनिफिट भी नहीं था, जो फ्री वाला राशन था वो भी नहीं मिल पा रहा था। कई लोगों के आधार कार्ड उससे लिंक नहीं थे राशन कार्ड से, तो उस टाइम पे सारी व्यवस्थाएं बंद थी, तो वो लिंकेज नहीं होने के कारण भी लोगों को सूखा राशन जो गवर्नमेंट से मिलता था वो भी नहीं मिल पा रहा था। और उसी क्रम में अगर हम देखेंगे कि लोगों का मतलब गवर्नमेंट के साथ क्या, मतलब उनकी जो प्लानिंग थी सोशल स्कीम में, चाहे वो उज्ज्वला योजना जो गैस के लिए है वो कितना %, तो उसका भी हमने एक सर्वे किया था। तो उसमें निकल के आया था कि 10 घर हैं, 20 घर में से सिर्फ 5 घर के लोगों के ही उज्ज्वला स्कीम योजना में नाम लिखे गए थे, और वो उसका बेनिफिट ले पा रहे थे, और बाकी सारे लोग उसी तरीके से मतलब अफरा तफरी थी, और लोग अपने घरों में ही, मतलब स्थितियां इतनी खराब थी कि लोगों के घर में 2-2, 3-3 दिन चूल्हे भी नहीं जले हैं। तो जो माहौल कम्युनिटी का हुआ था। और अगर हम पेंशन को लेकर बात करें तो चाहे वो विधवा पेंशन है, वृद्धा पेंशन है, या फिर विकलांग पेंशन है, उसका भी उनके पास कोई आइडेंटिटी नहीं थी कई लोगों के पास, कि उनके पास प्रूफ नहीं था कि वो इसका बेनिफिट ले पाएंगी। तो पहले से ही नहीं था, तो उस टाइम 1 या 2% लोगों को कम्युनिटी में उसका बेनिफिट मिला था। और अगर हम मनरेगा जॉब कार्ड्स में या उसके तहत काम मिलने वाला जो लोगों का था, वो पंजीयन भी नहीं था। और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण था कि जो लोग लॉकडाउन में रिटर्न लौटकर घर आ रहे थे वापस, उन लोगों का पंजीयन भी 2 महीने बाद गवर्नमेंट ने शुरू किया। तो उससे ये हुआ था कि लोगों के, एक तो ये डर था लोगों के अंदर कि उनको कोविड के उसमें लॉक ना कर दें, बंद ना कर दें, 14 दिन तक रहना पड़ेगा, और वो स्थितियां कौन किसको कहाँ पे छोड़ देगा, ये सारी चीजें थी। तो लोगों का ये डर भी था, तो कई लोगों ने इस डर के कारण भी पंजीयन नहीं कराया। अगर हम बात करें उस टाइम पे जेंडर की, उस टाइम पे लोगों के साथ जो एट्रोसिटी जो घर में रहने वाली महिलाओं के साथ थी या उन लड़कियों के साथ थी, वो स्थिति, मानसिक स्थिति जितनी उनकी थी।
रोहिणी,
सॉरी जी,
Yeah, you need to sum it up now.
Okay. हेलो
Yeah.
हाँ मैं बात कर सकती हूँ
We don't have much time, but if you can sum your
रोहिणी बस
dissertation in one line. Yeah.
आधा मिनट में सम अप कर दीजिए, फिनिश कर दीजिए।
ओके तो ये जो गवर्नमेंट का चाहे हम बात करें गवर्नमेंट का चाहे बात करें उन लोगों का जो इन सब चीजों से गुजर रहे थे उनकी स्थितियां बहुत ही ज्यादा खराब थी और गवर्नमेंट का भी कम्युनिटी को लेकर कोई मतलब सीरियस नहीं थे लोग और उनकी स्थितियां और भी ज्यादा डाउन हो गई थी तो इसी के साथ मैं अपनी बात को खत्म करती हूँ थैंक यू
Thank you, Rohini. Sorry for the cutting you off. I know the time wasn't enough, but Rohini has really very important points for all of us and also to the policymakers that narrative needs to be changed and the reduction of the criminalization of people of marginalized groups. This should be stopped. So with this, we come to the end of the first session. I would like to thank you all speakers. I know the time wasn't enough, but we really hope this collective will continue. You all are wonderful women. Thank you so much. And I pass the floor to Pradeep.
Thank you, Pragya. Thanks. It's good to hear the voices from communities from across the region. Also, there are demands and issues. So not to waste time, I would invite Paul Divakar, the chair of Asia Dalit Rights Forum and global co-chair, Global Call to Action Against Poverty, to moderate the next session, which is the response from the members of parliament and from the UN representative. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep Bhai. Welcome to you all from several parts of Asia. Not probably, we are the largest, both by population and also by the geography. And I think without the active participation and active compliance of our governments in the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't think the Sustainable Development Goals will be reached. This is very important, and I think this is very critical. The largest population are here. The largest of those who are excluded are here in this very rich cultured countries. The largest youth dividend is also here, and the largest amount of women's power is here. And of course, we also have the largest gap in poverty. And I think this is something that our policymakers and those who are the government representatives need to really look at. How is it that we are going to address these in these times? We have a great panel. Of course, it's extremely difficult to catch and then to get them to commit the time, but I'm really thankful that we have a very good panel. We have with us today Ms. Armina Soko, who from the APFSD, ESCAP, and I'm really thankful that she has managed to make it. Welcome to you. And you have seen the whole plethora of just a tip of the iceberg of the concerns that have been brought by the 5 speakers that we have had. In India, we have what is called denotified tribes, one of the most vulnerable and excluded communities, extremely resilient and very powerful in the way they're able to challenge despite the problems that they are facing. And especially what our comrade has said in terms of women who are forced into trafficking and several aspects. I think the way that they're challenging is very, very critical. We've heard the indigenous voices. both from Nepal and other countries. And then we've seen how their concerns, and especially the intersectionality of Indigenous and the disability, compounds the whole issue of not just discrimination, but exclusion from the basic amenities. We've also seen Dalit communities, and especially here for Bangladesh, you've heard them. And we've also heard the persons with disability and the challenges. So I invite you, Ms. Amina Suku, who is the Social Development Officer of UNESCAP. Thank you very much for being with us. You're really looking at, you are already working on measuring and addressing inequality of opportunity in Asia and Pacific, with a specific focus on leaving no one behind. So here we are presenting you with the voices of those who have continuously, intergenerationally being left behind. How can we ensure that they are around the table, that their concerns are prioritized, and how do we continue to lift up our voice without getting completely disengaged from this whole process? I think that's our fear. Sometimes the communities on the ground are disengaging. We are dealing with autocracy, elected autocracies in these years. So how your suggestions and responses on this will be extremely helpful. Over to you, Ms. Armina.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Thank you very much for this nice, very kind introduction. And it's a great honor actually to represent ESCAP at this forum. And I'll do my best to respond to your questions and also to the fantastic and very powerful interventions of all the speakers before. So from our side, as you said at ESCAP, what we're trying to do and what our team and my team is working on is exactly making sure that no one is left behind in the areas that are identified in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So the 2030 Agenda, as you know, is based on fundamental human rights. It's about everybody having access to basic services, basic opportunities, education, healthcare, information, water and sanitation, clean energy, eliminating violence against women, access to reproductive healthcare services, a lot of the issues that were raised by our previous speakers. And doing that for everyone, not just halving the amount of people like it was in the MDGs. This is about making sure no one is left behind. So with this presumption and with this starting point, what we want to do is take our assumptions aside and really look at the data to see what the data tell us about who's left behind. I heard some great statistics also from previous speakers, which was fantastic to have. Because, and I will get directly to the problem actually that we have, which is while we look at our data and we do our analysis, our dissimilarity indexes and our classification regression trees on who's left behind, a lot of the communities that we're talking about that are perhaps most marginalized are often not captured in the household surveys that we're analyzing. And if they are captured, they are because they represent a small percentage, perhaps sometimes of the population, it's difficult for them to show up as significant results in our data. What we can do to address that? There's a lot of things we can do to address that. One is, again, to look for intersectionalities and to look for multiple identities where, for example, women with disabilities and also from indigenous communities, they're not just, they're not just a person with disability, they're also women. So making sure that all women or all people have access to basic services, that is one approach. Another approach is to look beyond the quantitative data and to actually make sure, like you're doing in this forum, that these groups are represented in policy discussions as well, not just in, in our fora at the UN, but also in the countries in policy formulation discussions. To do that, we're working very closely with our country teams, UN country teams at the country level, and making sure that when they participate and when they advocate for policies in the country, that to also advocate that everyone is represented in these discussions. We also want to, I do also want to highlight that even though the data is not great on smaller marginalized groups, we do have some data. For example, the household surveys from India include information on caste and religion as well. So and the evidence we have there is that indeed it's the gaps in access to services for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are enormous, are the largest. And you may have a furthest behind group, before considering caste or tribe, you have a furthest behind group. When you start considering the caste, scheduled caste and tribe or scheduled tribe, that furthest behind group has a lot lower access. So this intersectionality does show up in some countries like India, where we have available data. And this is very bad because access to this service is not just about this generation, it's also about future generations. So if a mother does not have access to education, or if a mother is subjected to violence against women, that will have implications on her children. The same with basic income. If there's not adequate income in the household, that will have an implication on children's nutrition status, which in turn will affect their education at school or their future prospects in the workplace. So all of these lack of access to basic services, it's not about the human rights of the current generation only, but also of the future generations as well, and making sure that these inequalities do not multiply further down in time. Now, one of the major responses that we advocate, and we strongly believe that this is a responsibility of the government, is making sure that there's universal access to social protection for everyone. Because we know that these gaps exist right now. We know there's a lot of informality in the labor market. We note a lot of inequalities. So at the minimum, what countries can do right now is ensure universal social protection and work towards ensuring that there's decent jobs, formalize as much as possible, and but also work towards decent jobs in general with access to social protection for everyone. We've done the estimates at ESCAP, and we know that it does not cost a fortune to do that. Universal access to social protection across the life course, it is between 2 to 6% of GDP of any country in Asia and the Pacific. It's not more than 6% of GDP. And this would be an important boost, because if designed correctly, social protection systems can really boost the prospects, not just of people in the informal economy, but also women, mothers, people who are older to live in dignity, persons with disabilities who perhaps cannot work, or those who can work, who have additional expenses for making it to the labor market. So universal access to social protection to us is a let's say, a low-hanging fruit for governments in Asia and the Pacific. And the COVID pandemic has shown that it is possible to invest in social protection if there is willingness and political decision-making that is brave in that regard. So we know it's possible, we know it's affordable, and we're working with governments through an action plan right now to at least measure and also advocate for more expenditure on universal social protection. I will end here my quick thoughts, and I'm very looking forward to hearing the rest of the conversation and the other interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ermina Soko. I think it was quite clear. You have very clearly said some of the countries are not able to capture the situation of the most marginalized, the most vulnerable communities. And you have mentioned also India with its respect to the denotified tribes, Dalits and others. And also in other countries, people with disabilities, indigenous in Nepal. You're right. And also you're wondering the minimum that we should do is ensure that they have access to livelihoods, minimum access to livelihoods, and also the access to civic communities. But unfortunately, we have seen that this is not the case. This is not the case in several countries. And I have also noticed that in some countries, especially not just in South Asia, it is also happening even in the in other countries. The internal vulnerabilities, we are okay as far as we talk about the race between country and country, and then looking at inequalities within the country, between the countries. But the inequalities within the countries, the visibility of communities like Dalits, like Indigenous, like denotified tribes, they are not even on the table. There is a resistance from the government as to say, we will not allow Dalits in the agenda. We will not allow communities discriminated based on work and descent. And we will not wash these issues because we have policies within the country. And I somehow feel even UN agencies, multilateral agencies, are refusing to allow this kind of an open agenda, because even if you don't talk about it, how are we going to address these issues of inclusion? So this is something I'm glad you're really, you've expressed this way of yourself wrestling with this, and you yourself actually have been working on the social policy. I think we'll come back to you, or maybe towards the end, you would also be able to see how we can crack this kind of invisibilization of these communities, so that policies are there, and many of these in legal mechanisms are there, administrative mechanisms are there, but the rubber doesn't meet the ground. The policies are not getting implemented. And how do we ensure that this visibility gets more? I would like to welcome Honorable MP from India, Sri Jairam Ramesh. I do not know, Jairam ji, would you like to go, or can I request somebody else to go?
No,
And then
I'll wait for a while, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much. We have now with us Mr. Sitaram Yachuri. He is at present in a different place, and he said, let me just take a chance and make sure that I ensure that I record it and share it with you. I request that he is given the opportunity to speak. He is the former member of the parliament from India, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of India, and is one of the tallest left leaders in the country. And currently, probably he's the one who's articulating the demands of people's vaccine in this whole COVID. And he's also asking for the demand of inclusion in COVID, as well as some of the raising issues of financial inclusion and making sure that the livelihoods are secured for the communities. Over to you, Mr. Sitaram Yachuri.
Paul, we have a video message from Mr. Yachuri. Let me share it.
That's what I mean.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to join the distinguished participants at the Asia Regional People's Assembly. This assembly is taking place when the world and many individual countries are passing through agonizing times. And the pandemic that has been struck the world has created and exposed many an inequality that many of us
The voice is getting broken, Pradeep.
Inadequacies in vaccine distribution now, and this vaccine inequality is creating conditions whereby the control over the pandemic cannot be effective unless everybody is safe. Unless everybody is vaccinated, nobody is safe, and the possibilities of new variants and emerging and passing the immunity of the current vaccines, these are all very dangerous signals that must be prevented. That means these inequalities must be ended, not only for providing immediate relief, but also for structurally ensuring that in the future, such inequalities do not persist, which means first and foremost, the expenditures on public health in all countries and globally must rise exponentially to ensure that we prevent such consequences in the future. Secondly, this pandemic situation has brought out the social inequalities and economic inequalities in a sharp manner as well. The economy, global economy, and economies in many countries like us in India were already showing tendencies moving towards a very deep recession. Those have been exponentially, aggravated during the course of this pandemic. And this is having an impact on a vast section of the working people all across the world. Unemployment is on the rise, joblessness, income losses, growth of hunger, growth of poverty are all being reported by all international agencies and in every country. Now, this is something that needs to be tackled urgently through direct income transfers to the people, distribution of free food, and for immediate relief to prevent further deprivation and to prevent hunger stalking various parts of the globe. And for the future, the question of what are the structural changes that are required to ensure such agonies do not happen. And then you have this pandemic situation bringing out the vast inequalities for the marginalized sections. In India, we had a crisis of what we call the migrant labor, people who move from their habitation in order to earn a living for the whole family, move to cities and to industrial centers. With the lockdowns after the pandemic, they walked and trudged under scorching sun, hundreds of kilometers to reach back their homes. Such a massive human transmigration was not seen since the days of the partition of the subcontinent as the British were leaving us. And in addition to that, those who are socially oppressed in our country, like the Dalits who are subjected to caste oppression, are indigenous people whom we call the Adivasis, the women on whom sexual crimes are mounting, and the worst is the girl child and the children who are being pushed into trafficking, who are being pushed into child labor, abominable situations, conditions that are actually surfacing. All these have to be stemmed. For many who lost out on their education with the schools and colleges being closed, for many of the poor people, it's not merely a disruption of education, but it's a discontinuation of formal education, which has dangerous consequences. I hope this assembly will come out with concrete solutions for individual countries to implement, as well as at the global level, through global agencies like the United Nations, the WHO, and the UN agencies. I wish you all success in your deliberations, and I hope your recommendations will have a tangible, long-lasting impact which will help popular protests to develop, to force the governments of various countries to implement these proposals. Thanking you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Sitaram Yechuri. He's not here. He sends his greetings from mass dharna, that is mass action that is taking place right now in Hyderabad. And he regrets his inability to be personally with us, but he has promised that our concerns, our demands in the way that you would like to take it to the UN as well as to the domestic, at the domestic level, that he would endeavor to be with us in taking this up. Now I have the utmost pleasure in welcoming our dear parliamentarian, Mr. Jairam Ramesh. He is known as Farmers and People's Parliamentarian. He's currently the upper house member. We call it Raj Sabha, member of the parliament. And he has joined previous to the previous government. He was the cabinet minister of rural development. And he was Minister of Environment and Forest, and has taken many important policy decisions on land, on the way of conservation of environment, of ensuring that the mining and things are not completely depleting our resources and are being exploited. He is IIT, one of our premier institute from Mumbai. He's a graduate. He did his studies in Carnegie Mellon, and he has dropped out from his doctoral studies after that, and he's joined politics. So we very welcome you, Jairamji. This is the gathering, as we have shared earlier, of several leaders, activists from all over the Asian region, stretching across right from Korea to, we have up Japan, and also up to Afghanistan and across in between. We're primarily looking at realization of the goals for the most marginalized, especially. And there are 6 themes that we are looking at. One, looking at the whole issue of people's vaccine and health, climate and environmental justice. We're looking at human rights and the entire shrinking of the civic space. We're looking at austerity and social protection, looking at the whole issue of financing for development and how that is taking a second seat, especially in this whole COVID. And we're looking also at pathways to peace away from conflict. So primarily, we had voices from indigenous communities, people with disabilities, denotified tribes, Dalits, and intersectionality of some of these concerns, and people from the community have shared. And one of the things that they have shared is primarily, despite all these policies at several levels, the exclusion is still continuing, and I think you are aware of that. So we had Ms. Ermina Suko from UN ESCAP sharing with us some of her concerns, and now we would like you to share what are the ways in which you feel that can we continue to, of course, we have to place our trust in democracy, however autocratic the elected democracies have become. But how can you as a policymaker give us some insights into strengthening these interventions, strengthening these demands for justice? Over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paul. Getting a sense of the discussion from the few minutes that I've heard, over the last 25, 30 years, many countries in the world, China and India, of course, included, have undergone a process of profound economic transformation. This economic transformation has had a very significant impact on levels of poverty. However, this economic transformation has also been accompanied by an increase in inequality. So while poverty has declined very significantly, even if you just leave the last pandemic period out, if you were to look at the long period of the last 25, 30 years, there is incontrovertible evidence to show that countries of the world in which poverty was endemic, have been able to make substantial reductions. However, inequality has certainly increased. And I think this is the single biggest concern that we have, that there is something inherent in the process of economic transformation that we understand it, that leads to an accentuation of inequality. Of course, India is a unique country in this regard because inequality is ingrained from birth. We have the caste-based inequality, which is an inherent form of inequality right from birth. But if you keep that aspect aside, there are inequalities that are, that have arisen because of differential access to education. There are inequalities that have arisen because of differential access to healthcare, and this is certainly accentuated and become far more important in the last 15 months of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are inequalities that arise out of differential ownership of assets and different income levels. So I would say that the single biggest economic challenge that we face today, and speaking as a member of parliament in India and somebody who has had a fairly long association with economic administration, I would say the single biggest challenge that we face is to address these problems of inequality, which have not come down but have actually substantially increased. Secondly, I would say the challenge we face, we recognize that economic growth has to be rapid growth. We also recognize that growth has to be inclusive in order to benefit the sections of society who have traditionally not seen the positive effects of economic growth. But I think there is a third dimension to economic growth that is equally significant, equally important, equally relevant, which is that growth has to be sustainable as well. If growth is not rapid, you don't have enough growth to distribute. If growth is not inclusive, it's not equitable. And if growth is not sustainable, it's really not meaningless. So I think growth has to be founded on the three pillars of rapid growth, inclusive growth, and sustainable growth. And sustainability is something that is certainly in countries of the global south, countries like India, certainly, many countries of Africa, sustainability is not linked to lifestyles as it is in Western countries. In our countries, sustainability is linked to livelihoods. So we are talking of sustainability of the poor, not of sustainability of the rich to sustain lifestyles. So we are talking of issues of access to land. We're talking of access to forests. We are talking of issues of pollution that affect the morbidity and mortality of populations and extract a huge public health cost. And expenditure on health has now become the single most important contributor to rural indebtedness in our country. And a large part of this is on account of the fact that growth has become increasingly unsustainable. So we should recognize that sustainability is not some elitist or middle class pastime, but that sustainability is deeply linked with livelihoods. Sustainability is deeply linked with public health. Sustainability is deeply linked with the standard of living and the quality of life of the marginalized, the deprived, the disadvantaged sections of society. So I think these are concerns, But ultimately, these concerns are going to be addressed only through the political system. These are concerns that address through the process of democratic engagement with people's movements, with people's organizations, with different sections of society. We've been seeing in the last 10 months, for example, in India, we've had an agitation by farmers and farmers' organizations who are deeply concerned with the new laws that the government has enacted in the name of increasing incomes of farmers. But farmers don't see it that way. Farmers see it in a completely different perspective. But this is part of the democratic process. This is part of the democratic engagement. And I think political parties, political figures have to be deeply engaged in addressing issues of inequality, which has become an inherent feature of economic policy and economic transformation. And at the same time, political figures and political parties have to engage themselves with issues related to sustainability, defined very broadly, of which, of course, global warming and climate change is one aspect, the loss of biodiversity, and what it means is another, deforestation and access to forests is a third. So sustainability defined very broadly. I mean, these are issues that have to be part of the political engagement. In country after country, we are actually seeing a shrinking of the democratic space. We are seeing a shrinking of the role of civil society and the role of activist groups and activist organizations. And I think certainly in India, we are seeing that there's a systematic assault on civil society, both individuals and civil society organizations who raise uncomfortable issues relating to inequality, who raise uncomfortable issues relating to sustainability, and so on. So I think there is really no getting away from the fact that we have to build coalitions, we have to build partnerships, and we have to demonstrate the solidarity, for example, that has been demonstrated by farmers and farmers' organizations over the last 1 year in India. They're protesting against farmers' laws. So, Paul, this is all I want to say. I mean, I just feel that these are issues that have become more relevant in a post-COVID-19 world. They have always been relevant, but they have become more relevant and more significant in a post-COVID-19 world, which has seen a sharp increase in inequality. What a digital world means for inequality, we are all very, very concerned with. And of course, there is the whole issue of sustainability. In many ways, the COVID-19 pandemic is reflective of a deep imbalance in the way we manage ecology and we manage our biodiversity, we manage our forests. So I think COVID-19 should be a wake-up call, for the international community, that we can no longer afford to ignore or take for granted these issues of inequality and sustainability, which threaten the existence of everybody, but particularly of the poor, the marginalized, the deprived, and the disadvantaged sections of our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jairamji. I think very, very clearly you have given us the message. And this whole aspect of sustainability and the intervention with the electoral politics, many a time, or most of the time, we have hesitated to engage with the electoral system, saying that we are non-party or we're political, but we are not into the electoral. But one of the things that is clearly coming from you is not just in India, not just in Philippines, not just in Brazil, not just it was in the US, but I think in many countries today, the elected autocracies have completely deplenished our ability to raise the voice, especially much more the most vulnerable communities. So all of us, I think, to some extent, will have to rethink how can we engage much better, not just with the governance, but also with the electoral body politic. Because without that, all these efforts and all these systems and the party and the policies that are framed, whether multilateral or at the domestic level, are brought to naught, brought to just zero, because there's a strong resistance to that. And we have seen that in the farmers' agitation here in this country. So thank you very much. And if you have time, kindly stay with us if there is time, I think, for your words, but otherwise we'll let you go because you have other commitments that you have shared. And I thank you also, Ms. Ermina Suku and Mr. Sitaram Yechuri for their interventions and for the way that you have shared on the issues that we need to look at, the aspects of the most vulnerable communities. There are some questions, but I'll hand it over to Pradeep. I think I see in the chat Sarah Zaman telling us a new layer of communities have been pauperized, have been disenfranchised in this whole COVID we've seen. Their a little stable lives again have become more vulnerable, and the savings have been taken away. So some of those things, I think we are getting much more overwhelmed with also the needs of the traditional disempowered or excluded communities, in addition to the newly made poor that has come. I think this is some things that we'll have to also keep in mind, but again remind ourselves that we cannot allow ourselves to say that we will let these things go unchallenged. The resistance and the resilient power among the people is something that we'll need to continue to uphold. Thank you very much for this August panel. I hand it over to Pradeep.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, colleagues. It was excellent hearing the response from the members of parliament and UN representative. But actually running short of time because we have in this Global People's Assembly like 23 sessions in 2 days, and we're back to back. We have to end in time. Otherwise, then we'll have one session on SDG 16 plus just after ours. So we'll also invite you all to join there. But once we end, so I'll very quickly share something, a website which we have created, a kind of interactive website where you can let me share it, where you can write your demands and share. This is the website we have, and we have created for all of you who can post your message. You can click here, write your message, name, surname, time, country required, and what are your messages here. So these are the messages we are trying to do. Primarily, which will feed into the process of declaration, which we'll do as a larger civil society at the global level. We'll also take these messages to the UN General Assembly in different ways wherever possible. So I request you to fill in these messages when you are attending the sessions. I have shared it in chat. It's peoplesassembly.global. So I'm not doing it because of because we have less time in hand, but you can fill your name, your place. So once you do it, it will immediately pop up in the place you are in. Like if I'm from India and Bhubaneswar, it will pop up there with my name and the message is visible. We'll take these messages and flag it up in different fora, including primarily reflecting it in global declaration of people's assemblies. So with this, I've shared it in the chat. Please use it. And then I invite, then we'll have the group work. Let me share that and invite Yeah. Right. So this is the group. We will now divide into 5 groups. The whole process will be moderated and taken forward by Anselmo Lee, the APST coordinator. Anselmo, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me? Pradeep?
Yeah.
How we can
Yes,
divide
we
the
can.
group? Do you have already designated the group, right?
We
I think
have
the people
already
are going
the
to pick
group.
it.
I'll just only request is the moderator. Give me a second. I'll just hand it over to Rose, who is giving us technical support.
Yeah.
And I'll make her host so that she can also explain.
Okay, so we'll split into 5 groups.
Yeah, 5.
And we'll let everyone choose their group. So unless, of course, you're the moderator or the rapporteur, in which case you already know what group you're going to. But if your name's not on that sheet, I don't know if Pradeep, if you could share your screen again.
I can share my screen. So moderator and rapporteur will stick to their group.
Anyone else
and
can
then
just
others.
choose.
Yeah. One request for Civic Space, Josna will be moderating. Bina cannot join. Resma, can you do the rapporteuring for group 3? Resma from Forum Asia, or Josna, you will manage it when you are divided into groups. Thank you, friends. So I'll just share my screen, and Rose will divide, create 5 groups where you can join. Give me a minute.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
These are the groups.
I'm going to name them as well, so you'll be able to see which one is which. So, human rights and democracy.
So Anselmo, try to manage the time. We have comparatively less time for you. 5 group works like whatever, 15 minutes or so. And each moderator will give 2 minutes context setting, and then invite colleagues to share their issues and demands. And then will be followed by a plenary by the rapporteurs. That's something, the whole session you will take kind of to do the moderation.
Once again, each group will have about 20 minutes. Is it okay? 20 minutes for group discussion.
Yeah.
I think we need to give a little bit more time.
I was just saying to Pradeep actually that the session after this one is not using this link. So if we go on slightly, it is not the end of the world.
No, I think we will try to manage time, because ADA is doing one, even though they are not using this link, but most of all will ship into that, the same participants here and there. So we'll try to manage time as much as possible. Josna is also here, so she will have to go. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm just
Pradeep, can you check once again the time management? We have a 5 group discussion, and then coming back to the plenary for reporting. Is it okay 2 or 3 minutes for reporting about what they have discussed in the group?
Yeah. Yes.
And then we have an open discussion plenary, right?
Yeah.
I'm opening the rooms for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's them open. So just choose which one.
Yeah, small group is now open. You can choose. You can click the bottom and then you can choose, right? Okay. Dear friends, now the 5 small group discussion rooms are open. You click the small group meeting room, and then you can choose to go into one of the 5. And human rights and democracy, and vaccine inequality, civic space, climate justice, income inequality. These are the 5 topics identified for group discussion. So you can join according to your own interest.
Okay, breakout rooms are here.
Yep.
We'll just click and join, or how do we join?
Yeah, just you should have a message pop up, I think, if you just click the breakout rooms at the bottom.
Okay, so those guides are needed, yeah.
And if people
Don't join at the end. I can just assign you to a room.
I cannot also join. How do I join?
What does it say for you?
Okay, wait. Okay.
You should close now.
Yeah. They're being closed.
That's very quick. Welcome back to the plenary. I know time was short. Many people want to speak.
Okay.
So is every group back to the plenary now? I believe so. As you know, we have 5 thematic group discussions. May I invite rapporteur from Human Rights and Democracy Group? We have Anin Namala. Hello, Ichar was a moderator, right? Hello, Ichar.
Ichal was a moderator, yes. Thank you, Anselmo. I mean, of course, the time was extremely short. We were about 8 people from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and South Korea, Republic of Korea. I mean, primarily, you know, after a short overview from Ichal, what we discussed is across this region, we do find deficit in democratic practices. That's how Awalji put it, in the sense that the normal democratic practices of representation, of inclusion, of taking up the issues, these are not respected in practice. So this goes against the marginalized communities, and their voices don't get represented, their issues are not taken up. So that's one whole deficit. We know that in all our countries, there has been lots of representation for women parliamentarians. So that whole deficit in democratic practices. A second dimension that came up is also that how political processes attract authoritarian people, dominant people, people with criminal records. So that also makes the whole democratic process highly anti-human rights and very authoritarianism. A third dimension that we looked at is how within this region we have conflict areas. Kashmir is a conflict area, northeast of India we have conflict areas, we have border conflicts, and then now the Afghanistan conflict has added to the whole milieu of things. How stability and conflict further, you know, really make communities vulnerable, fear, and the whole deprivation dimensions that come into a conflict area. And so that was one other dimension that we looked at. So in terms of recommendations, surely I think this whole practice of first past the poll, where, you know, you just get the additional number of 1 or 2, and then you are the elected representative and do not feel accountability. And the way electoral processes work are some things that need to be looked at, particularly in the post-COVID and this fluent situation, and how we can create or support the system of human rights practices, institutional support, and the most vulnerable communities' voices to be brought in. So these were some of the recommendations that came up from, if anybody else, Ichal, if you would like any other point, please, anyone else go ahead. Thank you.
No, I think you very much covered it.
Okay, thank you very much. The whole issue of the democratic accountability and with some concrete cases. Let's move to the second group, the vaccine inequality, moderated by Smita and the rapporteur by Praman. Praman, are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
To share the
yes,
visual?
Yes, Anselm. Yep. Yeah, okay. Hi, friends. This is Praman. So our group was, our group discussed on the issue of vaccine inequality. And we were 6-7 participants, and we discussed about the vaccine inequality that we are facing, we discussed about how rich countries are blocking the TRIPS waiver demand by developing countries. We recommend, or we demand that the TRIPS waiver on COVID-19 vaccine and related medical products should be provided, should be supported, and technology transfer should be done. Those countries who have capacity to produce vaccine should be provided the technical know-how by the pharmaceutical companies and supported by the governments. And we also discussed about how women, children, and elderly people are left behind in rural areas, and this should be prioritized while government organizes the campaign against COVID-19. Also while locking communities, in our session one, some demands or suggestions were also there. So locking of communities, mobility restrictions during the lockdown without providing any basic services by the government have hugely impacted the indigenous people, especially women and elderly population. So it should be responded by the government. And right to information on COVID-19 should be provided to communities so that we could reduce the vaccine hesitancy, because there are many confusions in the community. And it was also suggested that no one is safe unless everyone is vaccinated. So vaccine inequality should be promoted. And we also discussed about the situation of migrant workers and how difficult situation they are facing in their working areas, as their right to health has been restricted, limited by the governments in the country of destination. So their health should be prioritized, and vaccination should be prioritized also. And we also should focus on the accessibility and availability of the vaccine, as there is a urban and rural divide among us. And also while we discuss, while the developed countries are discussing about the booster doses, low-income countries or middle-income countries are yet to receive a single dose of vaccine for many of its people. To ensure the vaccine equality, we also raise these issues. And we also discuss about the discrimination based on vaccine done by the North. That if we get vaccine from, for example, if we get vaccine from China, then it is difficult to get travel permission to the European countries, etc. And we also discussed about the big pharma companies who receive public funds for the research and development, but they aren't providing any information or recipes to develop the vaccines by other countries. But they are using public funds. They received it, but they are reluctant to provide it for the public good. And also we should discuss the issue of clinical trials, as big pharma companies are doing in the third world countries. And we also recommend demand the cancellation of all external debts so that countries should be, the country could focus and strengthen their basic services and make a public healthcare system more decent. So these are some of the discussions and recommendations. If I have missed any points, I request my friends to aid.
Okay, thank you, Pramin. Let's move to the, in case you want to add anything, please write down in the chatting room to save time. And let's go to the next one, Civic Space, Josna moderator, and then Bina as a rapporteur. Bina, are you ready to present?
Bina actually didn't join, so I had requested Resma to take note. I don't know who did that.
Anyone from this
hello,
group?
hello. Yeah, I'm here. This is Resma.
Okay.
I'm presenting the notes of our group discussion. We have discussed about the civic space and some of the human rights violations during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we discussed about how the civil society's voices are down during the pandemic. And we discussed and recommend that there should be a, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is many economic crisis in the globals. So we recommend to the governments, our governments, South Asian, East, and global to the about the cancellations of the external debts so that the resources can be concentrated to provide the quality basic services to the people. And we also discussed about the new liberal policies exposed by the COVID-19. We discussed about the privatization of the health sector, which has resulting the downsizing and squeezing of the public services. And we also discussed about the how the voices of the civil society's activists during the pandemics regarding their digital voices. At the same time, there are many government of the South Asian governments has passed many laws which is against the civil societies and use. During the restrictions of the movements, at the same time, the civil societies activists cannot raise their voice, cannot do any mass mobilizations, and the government are trying to slow down their voices by taking the restrictions of the movements. And we discussed about the human rights violations during the pandemics. Many women rights activists are facing different kinds of the problems, harassments during the pandemics. Yeah, I think we have discussed these types of discussions, and I request other friends in these groups if I have missed any points. So please, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's move to the next group, climate justice. Soma was the moderator and Pragya, rapporteur.
Yeah, I will share the discussion. So these were the participants in the group work. There were two questions that were discussed. The first one was what were the issues that were faced by the most marginalized people in your communities when it comes to climate change. So the first one was the displacement of the marginalized groups due to the natural disasters such as floods, droughts, and forest fires. And then losing of their lands and their livelihoods, which would ultimately result in loss of culture, rotational agriculture, indigenous knowledge and skills, especially of the indigenous communities. Well, one of the key issues faced by the marginalized groups was also the weak institutional mechanisms, as in human resources or even the focus of the state, etc. to address the climate change issues and existential threat to the marginalized communities, even to ensure the basic survival. There are issues about extractive industries, mining and hydropower development aggressions, which would result in difficulties in access to clean water and other resources. The second section of the discussion was about the demands for the climate change solutions. The action plans such as climate action plan and national action plans, these are to be reviewed. There is a lack of integrated planning, so these plannings need to be localized and supported by the CSOs. There is a demand for the energy transition and look for alternative energy, and also the inclusion of marginalized and not international, intersectional groups in the decision-making and policy-making processes. Yes.
Okay.
If you have any other things to add, my teammates.
I think it's a very comprehensive. I think cover almost all the points. I was there, in this group discussion.
Oh yeah.
Let's go to the last but not the least, income inequality and loss of livelihood. Very important issue, and moderation by Mustafa and the rapporteur Sai Prasanna from Badana to the India. Or Sai, yeah. Can you please, the mic on, unmute please. We cannot hear you, Sai. No, I cannot hear you. What about Pradeep? Can you hear him?
No, I also cannot hear him. Sai is where? I'm trying to trace him. Where is Sai?
But he has to fix the setting. Can you fix the setting again, Sai? Has some technical problem?
Sai.
I'm so sorry. Prasanna.
No, Sai is not mute actually. Maybe because of technical problems, internet strength of internet or something, we cannot hear him. He's on mute.
No, he's, yeah. Can anybody from this group share the video?
Maybe I can, Mustafa here.
Yeah, Mustafa, please, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think it was very less time on very important issue on inequality, but there were very good few suggestions came in. So one, of course, was that this crisis provides a chance for the Asian governments to invest more and have a universal social protection, because the need of that has came up, and that universal social protection that will include the access to health as well. The second important point came in was then of course financing these social protection, and the colleague from UNESCAPE shared that they have calculated the cost given the global averages, that it will require 6% of the GDP for the universal coverage of the social protection. And then how to finance it basically is the taxation thing. So there's a high wealth inequality in Asia and Pacific than the other regions of the world. So there need to be a more progressive taxation on the wealth to generate more domestic revenues to finance the social protection and other services. And then also interact with existing the tax reforms, and with 15% minimum corporate tax and incoming opportunities in Asia when India and Indonesia will be G20 chairs, and how civil society and we can work together to put more pressure on that. So the tax is equitably distributed, even whatever the 15% gains for us. Third, of course, the discussion was around investing in the care services. Again, the role of care has, came up during the pandemic, and majority of that role is played by women, and in most of cases it is unpaid. But we know how economies and societies are sustained through the care services and the unpaid care work. So the more investment in care will help in not only livelihood opportunities, but creating more equal opportunities. And there was a discussion on the kids losing the school years, mostly from the poor communities. There is a high digital divide, and the poor people can't access to the internet and the cell phones and the digit to have the online classes joined. And that is going to impact a lifetime of a generation and create further inequalities in our societies. I think these were the key points in our group discussion. Over.
Okay, thank you very much for the input. Sai, still we cannot hear you. So sorry. Just technical problem, you know. Anyway, the moderator Mustafa covered, I think, all the point. In case anything missing, Sai, please write down in the chatting room. I think we have, you know, these are 5 key issues. As Pradeep said, please make sure that you submit in writing so that we can bring this or the result of your discussion into the final declaration. Okay, so thank you very much for your contribution. And I think these 5 issues, I mean, we have many regional organizations and also national organizations working on those issues. I hope all the important point in the declaration so that we can use this declaration as a guiding, you know, the tool for our follow-up action. Now, Pradeep, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ansel, my friends.
Pradeep, can I just come in for a minute?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
As Anselmo said, request all the rapporteurs to please send their short 1 paragraph with bullet points by this late afternoon so that we can draft it and share it with the larger group and have it ready by 24th, 25th. So please request everybody to share the draft notes so that the drafting committee can further finalize it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you, Anselmo. Thank you, Annie. I think we'll close it. But before that, we already have a drafting committee, which will led by Annie, other colleagues, Anselmo, Pragya, Veena, Bal, Praman, Sai, and Resma. They will take this and come up with a draft declaration, which at one point, I think on 24th, we'll share with you. On 25th, we'll release it out. This is Asia Demand Charter, but all the rapporteurs are requested to send this rough note, whatever you have, to me, so that I'll give inputs to the global declaration process. So yeah, so over to Bal Krishna Katel, Fight Inequality Alliance for Asia, for closing remarks and thanksgiving. Bal.
Thank you, Pradeep. I'll not take much time, and I feel that we have had a very fruitful discussion, and the major issues we have raised here and discussed will be a guide for us to prepare the Assembly Declaration, and it will also be a guide for us to take our course ahead. And thank you for all who participated in the discussion. The issues and challenges shared by the speakers representing the marginalized constituencies and the response we heard from the honorable members of Parliament and UN representatives, I feel that there is a lot to do to win our battle for inequality, justice, social inclusion, and dignity. But the point of hope I can say there is that this is our common struggle, and there are common points that connect us to march forward together to win the struggle that we have been already part of. So I thank you, panelists of the first session. Thank you so much, Kanlaya, Tamanna, Lijat, Pratima, and Rohini ji, for the issues you have brought to the discussion along with the facts and statistics and putting forward the strong recommendations. They were incredible. They have been a good reference for us to chart the declaration that we have been talking. And my thanks are also to the honorable members of Parliament and the politicians who shared their precious time with us. Sri Jairam Rameshji and Sri Sitaram Yachuriji for his video message, and the UN representative Mina Sokoji for your insight into strengthening the demands for equality and justice. And they are well noted and well documented for the reference and to base our declaration. thank you, the thematic expert, for bringing out the issues of inclusion and the issues of intersectionality into the discussion. The points discussed in the small groups were well documented by the reporters of each theme, and it will fit into the Assembly declaration that we will bring out soon. As Pradeep shared, I think we'll be bringing it out by the deadline he has shared with us. And the session moderators and the reporters, they have done an incredible job. And our drafting committee is already there working on the Asia declaration as an outcome of this assembly. We have received documentation support and social media support from the colleagues from Wadanatoro. I thank them all and I appreciate their contribution and hard work. Last but not the least, my thanks also go to the organizing partners for coming together to make this assembly a success. And thank you all the participants who joined us and made this assembly a success today. It is incredible. And I feel that we enjoyed it in terms of the issues, listening from different colleagues, and in terms of the way we are thinking to move ahead together. Thank you so much. And this assembly has been a connector of us, and we'll be moving together. Thank you once again, all the colleagues, participants, presenters, reporters, panelists, and all the participants. And I feel, Pradeep, I think here comes to an end of this assembly too, right?
Yeah.
Pradeep.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you. So before I end, I request also you to join the SDG 16 session, which will be following. I shared the link, which Ada and other colleagues are doing. We're having the Dalit group and DWD group doing afterwards. So I shared all those information with you. Please register and join. Thank you very much. So we can end it here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.